Yeah, I mean that kid. We've talked about it. I went back and I watched all of 2024, every race he was in 2024, everything he did, and this simply wasn't there. I mean, you could tell he knew how to ride. There's no question. He was winning the SMX Next races, talented, but this assertiveness, this level of control over the motorcycle, this level of precision, this confidence on and off the bike, like his personality. I don't know. I would love for Ben to weigh in on that because I realized like, man, how did I miss such a superstar evolving and developing and emerging? And I honestly look back and say I kind of didn't. Like the jump happened sometime between May of 24 and January of 25 when I wasn't around. I wasn't, at in Tallahassee where he was training and practicing. So I don't feel like I really missed it. It happened, which is incredible. Um, but it might be one of the biggest jumps and improvements and like a metamorphosis of a rider in a 6 month time span that I've ever seen. Literally, that I've ever seen in my life watching this sport for 40 years. I don't know that I've ever seen a jump like this. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Ben talk about it because he's much closer to the situation. But I just want for anybody who maybe you love the sport, you're just listening for the first time, whatever, like what Cole Davies did in from 24 to 25 is not common. That is wildly abnormal to improve that much in less than a year.
Yeah, well, to me, it's not. I have always believed that he had the ability to rise to this level, and I expected him to rise to this level. And to speak to that in detail, when we first came to Cole's first ever American Supercross race, it was Anaheim 2 in 23, was it? I think it was.
Hmm.
And we showed up there. If you go back and look at the footage, um, I would say he was the best rider on the whoops that day. He wasn't the fastest, but technically he was the best rider in the whoops that day. If you go and look at the early part of 24, was it? When he raced, I forget the guy who was racing on the Star Yamaha at the time. Some of the
Gavin
skills
Towers.
that Gavin tells, some of the skills and decisions that he was making at the time in that futures race, to me, were pro level decisions in the way he was going about it. If you fast forward to Salt Lake City last year, I don't know if I'm this accurate on this, but I think he was the only rider in the Essex Futures to blitz the whoops in that race. I could be wrong about that, but I think he was. I don't even think Haiden Deegan was doing that in the pro race that evening. So to me, the signs have always been there that his level of skills he was destined to be that good on a motorcycle. What the thing that probably I was concerned the most about was the mental package. It is a very, very, I mean, you've been to New Zealand, JT, you've seen it. It's a very massive, steep curve to go from when Cole Davies arrived at Anaheim 2 in 23, he'd never been to America. You have to put yourself in his shoes and think like he's standing in the pits, rubbing shoulders with the guys under the Star truck because I know Swanee, so we're over there. He's under the PC truck because I know Mitch.
Hmm.
I'm standing there talking to Darren Lawrence. Like this is just like his jaw's on the ground. He's paralyzed in this environment, And so the learning curve and for me the mental side of it for him and actually being able to go into the pro ranks and be able to stack up mentally for me was the biggest question mark. And immediately as we saw at the start of the season, that question mark was gone straight away. And so I've always expected that he would rise to this level in that race. And I want to speak to that more because I believe it's down to the real fine skills of riders of the likes of Cole and Jet Lawrence, because you can put him in the same category as Jet in the way that he uses his skill sets on a motorcycle. I don't believe in talent. And the reason why is because I don't know much about Jet and how he's done it, but I do know about Cole. And when Cole came to ride with me, he didn't ride the way he does on a motorcycle using his eyes and his feet and the way that he does now. He learned that through repetition, and through that he gained confidence, and from that confidence he gained speed. And so that I see that as a skill set. And what I see going forward for Cole, and I'll go on record as saying this, is that he's going to be a massive threat in the future to the premier class, and he has a better shot at it than someone like Haiden Deegan because of his skill set. In this day and age, the package that's been obviously the biggest involvement in the I don't know, the latest trend. Let's say, at one point it was how hard you train, right? RC brought that to the table with Alvin, and then all of a sudden there was a huge emphasis with James and Chad on setting the bike up, and then the latest wave has been around technique. And to ride a motorcycle to the level that these riders do now, and that real fine 0.1% of riders, that's where the real difference is. And although someone like, if you compare Haiden and Cole right now, right, Cole's fresh to the game, Hayden's in his third year. Cole is close on speed because of his skill set, and that's going to only improve as time goes on for him. So I really think that he has an enormous future, based on the trajectory that we're seeing right now through his fundamentals, to allow his ceiling to be so high, and that's what you're seeing.
Hard to argue it.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. Obviously, you've taught him for many, many years, and he is such a fundamentally sound, technically proficient rider. And I remember hearing a podcast, might have been Gypsy that you did. You were saying guys like him and Jet, they've obviously ridden and trained like a pro since they were youngsters, and that obviously helps them fast track to when they actually become a pro. It's not such a huge step, even though, like you said, it's a massive step from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, whoever you want to put it. And do you reckon? You see, obviously, with MotoGP riders, any athlete really, when you're making such a big sacrifice, even your young kids and family now moving to Europe, chasing the dream, there's just that extra bit of desire and determination to make it, the appreciation of the sacrifice. You feel that too, Ben? Obviously, you're just seeing it's all coming together and that extra drive as well. So he's making it happen, and it's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think to speak to that point around, the fact that these elite riders that we see, they're riding at a pro level at an earlier age, and they're not riding and racing like amateurs. And that's a critical difference that you're seeing in the ability for those riders to stand out and race to the level that they are. And that's you made a really, really good point about that. Yeah, I think the fact that you've seen sort of different paths as well is a major factor. I don't necessarily think that the American amateur scene is the best route in terms of racing at only X amount of events a year, and spending a lot of time and effort and energy and finances, in some of these facilities. I don't believe that's a great path. I certainly believe massively in Essex Futures. When I heard about that, I think it was early in 22 that I heard that was, on the calendar to become a part of the pro races at the X amount of events. I told Cole's parents, this is the path you need to take. That is going to showcase your ability to the American pro teams, and also allow you to gain just valuable experience, racing in those stadiums and that environment. You race, you have a few weeks off, so you get to, replay it all, go through what you need to improve, and have a go at it again. I think the way that environment is for those amateur riders now to then be able to progress into the pro ranks, I think it's a phenomenal environment. I think it's long overdue as well. And I don't think a lot of people realize still how good it is or how valuable it is. What do you think about that, JT?
Yeah, I mean the experience is irreplaceable. It's such a accelerator for these kids' trajectory. It speeds up the process by 2 years probably. When they finally do go pro, they know the schedule, they know what the track conditions are like, they know the expectation, the pressure and like the situational aspects don't feel foreign to them. The crowd, racing at night, like all those things that you can't replicate in any other way. They've already gone through all those things. Like they literally are sitting on the starting line when the 450 heat races come off the track, so they just get all of this invaluable experience. So they don't feel like it's this out of body experience when they turn to the professional ranks. So, I think it's very similar to EMX racing. Look how well prepared they are when they move up to MX2. They can come in and get on the podium, in their first year at times. It's no different than that. It's just removing all of the uncertainties and the unfamiliarities, so their talent can really shine through instead of all the other things getting in the way of that for, a year or however long that adaptation takes.
And obviously, we may as well just finish on touching on the Cole Davies Deegan incident. It was sort of universally considered it was not really a dirty move or anything. It was just the whole package with Deegan, the way he'd been building up to it. He had the incident with him earlier in the day, and just the incident with pretty much most riders on the gate this season, it seems. But the ceiling and maybe there's a little bit of threat there for Deegan on Cole, seeing his teammate rise so quickly and arguably being more accomplished out him on Supercross as a discipline, despite not having, I guess, maybe the pathway Deegan has. He was like the man. He wants to put a flex on everyone. So it's an interesting one. You can see them separating the coasts next year for sure at Star Racing, but it's pretty impressive that he's already kind of surpassed all these guys like Deegan and Juju and Shimoda so quickly in his rookie season, isn't it?
Yeah, crazy stats. You see that one that came out with the pie chart there, and they had him at 90 laps lead, was it, or something
crazy.
Something crazy. I think going into the final round, I saw a stat was 50.5% of laps led out of the class for the West Coast. That's for sure. Yeah, look, I don't view that pass any different to like you said, how it's sort of universally being discussed. At the end of the day, I can give you a little bit of insight from Cole's perspective, right? And I talked to Cole after the previous round that he won, and Deegan got close to him. Was it Indianapolis? Maybe, I can't remember where it was. He won two on the trot. He won Seattle and then another round. And I said, man, you let Deegan. You let second place, it was Haiden, you let second place get too close, He said, no, I had it on lock. He said, I knew what was going on. I was comfortable with the scenario, and it was all in control. And after Salt Lake City, I rang him to sort of dissect it a bit, and he straight up said, I really didn't know that he was that close to me. He said, obviously, if you rewind back and look at the lap riders, I think if you go through the lap times, actually, I've got them on my phone. It goes through, and they're in the sort of, I think, high 50s, 51s. And then at one point, there's a couple of 52s and 53s, and it was due to lap riders. And then Cole goes straight back to a 51.9, I think it was. And the reason I'm saying that is just because that sort of brings into context how Haiden got to his rear wheel was through those lap riders, and he just said he just flat out didn't know that he was that close. Obviously, Cole made the small error exiting that turn, and then it would just open. It was like the seas open, right? Like it was like, here it is for Haiden. And I think something to probably also bring into the conversation, I don't think I've heard people talk about this, but if you think back to the season, Hayden's raced Cole pretty softly. I would go so far to say he's raced Cole the softest of anyone that he's ever raced. And I haven't talked to Cole about this, but I would think that he's probably, Cole's pretty young and potentially a little naive to this, in a sense that, he may have thought, well, hey, he might not race me like he does anyone else. And I've had not talked to him about this, but Hayden's going to race any person, teammate or not. Like he's out there to win, and so he should be. And I would also say to Cole that if that was you and the shoe was on the other foot, you would race him the same. And really, it wasn't a dirty pass. It wasn't overly aggressive in any sense of the imagination. So I think Cole, he'll learn from that. He's a very quick learner. That's one thing, that just in my experience with him, he's sort of, his brain works similar to a computer in a sense where he's able to then take the information and then process it through, and you'll see a better version of himself in those scenarios in the future, I'm sure. So it's crazy, that these couple of eras, let's call them judgment eras, have happened in the part finals. It takes the shine off it in a sense, because those are the eras that we thought we might, or you would suggest would happen with a rookie at round 1 or 2 type of thing, but it's just part of the game, and unfortunately it's happened, and he'll just learn from it and become a better racer, and there's no doubt that he will be able to do that, with the way that he's able to the way he's been able to progress, throughout his early part of his career.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And obviously, yeah, Deegan has been very complimentary to him on, social posts, post-race interviews. They seem to have a decent friendship, but I guess out there in racing, teammates don't really exist, and even more so in the case of someone like Deegan. He's just all about winning and doing what he can for himself, like most people. But yeah, it's pretty cool, I guess, dynamic to follow as time progresses and they progress and into the 450 class. That whether they get separated one day, because you'd imagine a lot of those teams are gunning for Cole and Deegan and throwing big money at him. So we'll watch this space on that one too.
Yeah, he just got to, Cole has got to be aware of that. It's situational, right, with every rider, and he has to know how he races Cole as opposed to racing Juju or whoever it is. He's going to race those two specifically. He's going to race them for Andrew Adams for a very, very long time, and then he's also going to, in time to come, be in the mixer there with some very experienced riders as well that have been seasoned champions. So, it's just, I guess, the way that you apply your racecraft, and like I said, it becomes situational with the riders that you're racing, and how you go about racing them, and that just comes with experience and trying to absorb that, as quick as you can to then apply it the next time that you're in that scenario, really.